Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back, hopefully back to a new episode of the Wholistic Center, the podcast that looks at what do ancient philosophies and civilizations have to teach a modern world. My name is Nicolas Zart, and I am your host for this podcast. And I wanted to wish you all a happy new year. This is really our second podcast coming up, and we'll be going into more every week where we talk a little bit about what we've written on the website and invite you to share, like, comment, and of course subscribe, because that's important for us, and that's important also to get up there so that we're out there and people can find us. But we also would like to hear your thoughts. What do you think is a holistic life? And by the way, we spell holistic, we spell the Wholistic Center with a W because it's the whole that encompasses the whole and everything. So we're going to keep with the theme of Happy New Year 2026. And what I'd like to add to that is, may you find the work, the financially rewarding work that does not feel like work. Isn't that a wonderful thing to tell people? But this is what I hope for everyone around me, myself included. And also, just to reflect really quickly, we started in 2025, but it was a very soft start. And 2026 is when we hope we're really kicking the Holistic Center into gear. And I'm writing back on the success of my other podcast that's done extremely well for such a niche podcast in a very niche transportation industry. We hope to do the same thing here, but we also hope that this has a much wider audience, since I think we are at that same place where we were roughly about 130 years ago, where people are asking, what's the point of life? Why are we doing all this? And what's happening right now? And if you have been watching the news, a lot of things are happening right now. So I wanted to take on one theme that happens every year, right around the 1st of January. It's those dreaded New Year resolutions. And my gosh, they can be really dreaded because we put such a heavy load on our backs to better ourselves, to have good resolutions and to stick with them. And of course, a lot of studies shows that they don't. After 3-4 weeks, they don't exist. Case in point, if you go to a gym right now, you'll see that there are a lot of people in a gym, but come back a month later and you'll see that that number has dwindled down. So in this article I wrote, Why New Year's Resolution Feels So Heavy and How to Frame Them, you'll see also a bunch of wonderful surveys, research, and reviews that help us frame all of this. I'll quote this one here because this is actually fantastic. This one survey showed that 62% of the people who make resolution feel pushed into by social expectations. You know that you're supposed to have New Year's resolution. You might even hear people saying, what are your New Year's Eve resolution or your New Year's resolutions? I always tell them, I said, I only have one, is to continue bettering myself. But this year I want to add, may you find the work that you love to do, because I think that would give us happier people around us. And also, another study shows that a lot of people drop their resolutions within the first few weeks. So by the end of January, usually a lot of these resolutions fall apart. And why is that? Because we have this undue sense of making big, bold statements, big, bold resolutions, and Lord knows that's really difficult to do. Some experts have said, why don't you break it down into, malleable little trenches, right? Or little different types of sub goals to reach your entire goal. And this is, by the way, an interesting topic that the Lifebook community has done really well, is, dividing your whole year into 11 goals, the 12th being the recapitulation of all of it. So that makes a lot of sense for some people. Unfortunately for me, it's never really worked well because my goals change very, very often. But what was interesting is a little bit of research into the history of resolutions found out that it started as a way to honor the in-between seasons. Winter is that season when we've already gone through the equinox. Now the plants are already starting to move through the cold of the winter. They're emerging from their slumber, and they are, in some cases, already pushing through and everything. In fact, a good friend of mine, a good doctor of mine, a holistic practitioner of mine said, we get it all wrong. Winter is exactly what we think of spring, and spring really is what we think of the summer. Summer is really what we think of autumn or fall, and fall is the winter. And I think reframing our mindset like this makes a lot of sense. But so we went from these moments where we would be thankful for our community, be thankful for our beliefs, be thankful for ourselves, and the resolution to continue working together as a community and ourselves and helping ourselves and our brothers around us, sisters and brothers around us. So this is really where it started. Somewhere along the way, something happened and something changed to make it become this really intensive thing. So one of the first things I thought of to help us to create better resolutions and goals for New Year's is to use a very fundamental tool that was developed right around ancient Greeks, or at least it was made famous around the ancient Greek times. And that's the first principles thinking, that boiling down to the essential, undividable, unbreakable, the bottom line basic idea for anything, whether it's a complex problem you're trying to solve, in our case, or anything that comes up to you. First principle thinking. This is really interesting because it would lead us to ask questions such as, what should my New Year's resolution be around, well, what do I feel I need? Where am I? What is going on? So we've sort of started digging more into that by saying, before you start asking yourself these questions, take a step back. First of all, relax. Hey, congratulations. You're still here. Congratulations. You've done a good job. Congratulations. Despite all the temptations and everything, you're still working on yourself. You're still asking these questions. You haven't sold out. You haven't said, give up. A lot of people do, by the way, and a lot of people who happen to be very high up in the public eye, right? Once you do that, the next step is take a few breaths. I mean, really relax. Take a few breaths and start checking in with yourself. Feel these breaths coming in, coming out, and chill out. Just disengage from yourself. Let yourself go. Get into that observation mode. The more you do this throughout the day, the more you will get into this stillness moment or period of your life or space in your life. Once you're into that stillness moment, more and more you will develop silence within, totally within, inside of you. And this is when you can really start to ask questions. And by the way, you might even hear certain voices, but the funny thing is, once you get into this silent mode or this stillness mode, you know which voices are real and which voices are just ego driven. It's very strange. Don't know why, but that's how it is, and it's beautiful. Trust yourself on that one. But ask, once you are at that peaceful moment, and if you need to pause, please pause and do it now. Ask yourself, what do I feel at this present moment? This is a way of checking in with yourself. What's going on inside of me? Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling pressured to do something? Check in with yourself really deep down inside. Be honest with yourself. Observe, no judgment. Just observe. You're someone trying your best. You're not a bad person. You're just trying your best. And if you're a bad person, well, then, hey, good luck. Deal with all of that in your next incarnations and even in this incarnation, because Lord knows karma has a strange way of coming back to you. The next question is, what am I really trying to feel more of in terms of maybe peace, energy, connection, meaning? And stay with that one for a long time. Try to sense, what is it that I want to feel more of, to experience more of? In other words, what do I feel is missing? Not necessarily what is missing, but what do I feel is missing? And stay with that one for a while, because that one is really complicated and you will have different layers opening up more and more. And this is something you need to revisit very, very often. Follow it up with, what kind of goals do I want to set for myself? And start with something very general, very basic, no specific details into that. And ask yourself, where did this goal come from? It might sound a little crazy, but this will be interesting to find out if this is a personal goal, or is this something you're taking on from your environment, from society, from social media, or does it really come from you? What do you want to experience versus what is society leading you to experience? And I use society as a way to talk about anything external, really. And then finally, ask yourself, if there were no ads, no social media, no podcast, no nothing, you were just sitting in your private little sanctum somewhere out there, pure quietness around you, pure stillness around you, what would you choose to do? Simple, right? So these questions really help you from moving away from being what we call a happiness seeking missile, sort of just looking for the next pleasure, the next happiness part of you, to somebody who's a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more grounded, somebody who understands what they want and what they do not want out of life. Another thing too that we often forget about that, and this is really tricky because it might not be obvious or that easy to do, but enlist the help of people around you, especially people you care about. Ask your close ones, can you help me think this through? Can you help me keep with this? Maybe start a small group and say, hey, this is the people building resolutions for the rest of the year group kind of thing, where we hear each other out. We don't judge each other, but we're, trying to go, that's interesting. Where are you coming with that one? Put on a coaching hat. I truly ask the question, where are you coming with that? Or where does it come from? That's interesting. Don't judge. Leave it there. Leave it for the other person to come up with. They know the answers better than you do. And then try doing, asking those questions, finding that inner stillness moment. Try it a second a day. Just a second a day is already doing something, right? Then once you feel comfortable with a second a day, then do 2, 3, 4, so on, and until you move into a whole minute, a whole 5 minutes, then hours go on, and then eventually you'll be able to do this for much, much, much longer than that. But break down those goals into essential goals. They'll help you do 2 things. Find out if the goal is really, really what you want, and is it manageable? And then in the end, is this what you really want to do, kind of thing? You can actually break it down like that. So, we invite you to chill out, take it easy. I mean, really, seriously, respect yourself a little bit here. You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself by wanting to have resolutions when it should be a fun thing. It should be something that celebrates your uniqueness, your greatness. As my same doctor, by the way, said one day, he said, what's wrong with you is besides the point. What's right with you is the point. And that's what we'd like to stress at the Wholistic Center. What's right with you is the point. Work on that part. And if any resolutions are to be made, is how do you get more of that instead of less of the negative stuff? The negative stuff, it's there, and it's a great teacher, but it's not a teacher whose feet we sit at all the time. We want to go towards who we are and integrate that into our lives. So there you go. Happy New Year 2026. We hope you've enjoyed this fairly short podcast, and we hope that you will like and subscribe, and please share your thoughts. What are your goals, your resolutions for this new year 2026? And if some of you find it in you, write down how you got there. How are you thinking about that? How do you plan on managing that so that it's a sustainable adventure into 2026? Thank you very much, and then we'll see you next week with yet another topic.